Welcome to the Valve Bounce. Ford Supercars teams got the tweaks they asked for, but it was the low crowd attendance that really grabbed our attention. Plus, was the AirTouch 500 a boring race? And will Whincup hang up his helmet at the end of Bathurst? The topics of today. Welcome to the Valve Bounce. Welcome, Damo. We're pumped. Ford won.
Oh, Ford did win. Did I miss the end? What? Was it? Sorry, I might have dozed off in the middle of that fucking race. Cody, well done. I'm so happy. We'll talk about why. I don't know. It didn't grab me. But in any case, it had all the hallmarks of being a great race. When was the last time we went safety car free for a 500? You might ask. Long time ago. Don't even think there's ever been one for a long time. It has been something that just everything fell into place. Some teams fell apart, and couldn't be happier for Todd and Brody to clinch a win.
Yes, congratulations, Todd and Brody. Loved seeing that car rocket at the front, and what a rocket it actually was, because that race, I know you thought it was boring, Damien, but honestly, for a green flag endurance race, I thought it was pretty bloody exciting. Heaps of strategy, fuel fillers that aren't working for the teams that we don't like. That same team also coming off and tripping over each other in practice sessions. I mean, what wasn't there to like?
Well, you are 100% right. If you actually look at all the items, and so let's talk about, we had a discussion post-race, and I was just like, I was so uninspired. I thought it was boring. And you're like, mate, those safety cars, like the fuel filler issues, a race to the end. Well, and I'm like, you're right. It does actually tick every box.
Yeah, it does.
Why was I, who was someone who had to watch it on delay, so I didn't watch it till later that night, and I just started skipping through parts of it. I was just sitting there going, right, just like, I'll just wind it up, do a 10 second. I just kept going. I don't know why. It just didn't grab me. And I just felt like, whatever. Yep. Then it was like, great result. I was happy.
Well, I think it goes to show that results don't change your outlook on things. But you know what the problem is? We are the problem. Us who are taking it in are the actual problem, right?
Yep.
Not the actual racing. We have become a society where we scroll through everything. Nothing grabs our fucking attention. And this is why we think that normal racing and good racing is boring.
I think you're right partially, because I think, as I said, the dynamics for the race were all there. But I do want to just add, there is just this elephant in the room that we can't get past, despite it being a fantastic racing track. There is just something that the bend doesn't grab the viewers on TV. It's like the back part of the track, other than that never-ending right-hand turn, just in case you didn't hear that a few times and I was even skipping stuff. But like, apart from that, like, you kind of just like, they go through the first couple of corners, and then it's just like corner. Oh, we're at the right-handers. And then it's like corner, second last and last corner. That's what I sort of felt like doing a lap, that there's just no, there's no like, or coming to the cutting, or, like there was just none, it just doesn't have that feel. And so, I don't know, there's a disconnect for me that I'm really concerned about how engaging it's going to be, given that the cash spoke before the event.
Yeah, 3 years. I think you're on the money with that one.
Yep.
I like this event. Now, here's why I like this event. That track is excellent. I don't care what anyone actually says. It is a good track. Could the positioning of cameras be better? Yes. I think that needs to be worked on. They need to find some places where they can get some really cool shots and make it a little bit better. It is the biggest fault of the bend is that it doesn't have large repercussions if you come off the track. And we saw that, Whincup flying off the track. I think we saw not Job Stewart. What was the other guy who was with Cameron?
Yep.
McLeod came off early on, even, and they come off, but there's no repercussion for coming off. Like, they just sort of slide across the grass and so forth and rejoin. I think that's probably the harder thing. But what I think could actually be really good for this event, and it would probably take a little bit by the Shahins to sort out and spend a little bit more than they've already spent on a great facility, is an area of camping.
Yep.
Getting people to bring in camper vans and things like that, and all like try and get it as far around the track as you possibly can.
Yep.
Because it really could have that almost American feel I reckon if you could see like all the camper vans and people around the joint, it'd feel great. But then, I mean, this also comes back to the other thing that we were talking about, crowd attendance.
Yep.
What do supercars have to do to get a crowd attendance? I don't know anymore, other than maybe make it cheaper, because I know that the bend is in the middle of nowhere, and there's not, and this is another reason they need campgrounds, because ultimately there's nowhere to stay there either.
Well, you've got obviously the caravan park there, and then you've got the main hotel, the Ridges, I think it is. And then you basically have to stay outside of that somewhere. And obviously all the teams, etc., take up majority of like the Ridges and things because they all want to be close. There's not a whole lot left. And so I think you're right that the crowd numbers were low. I think they said something in the order of like 40, maybe 50,000, I think it was. But, you know, like if you compare that to the, you know, to Sandown, which is what it's effectively replacing. I mean, it's just not even close. I reckon you probably get, what is it, like 50,000 in that grandstand at Sandown. Plus you've got all up the back and down at the last corner and stuff. So you get a lot of people in at Sandown. And I think they need to find something. And I think maybe you're right. Let's try and utilize that back part of the track and just have some extra camping. So people can go there. It becomes a cheaper, you know, event because you can do that camping and you're not having to pay for additional accommodation, you know, at a massive expense at a hotel or a B&B or something. So yeah, because the numbers, it didn't look good. They barely looked like there was any crowd there.
And that is a problem because atmosphere plays a big part in these races. I mean, you love it, right? Those famous shots that you see of cars with like massive grandstand or massive bank of people on a hill.
Yeah.
They're the things that you love to see. Yeah. And that's what this is missing ultimately. And like, I suppose I'm comparing it because recently I was looking with my wife to potentially go across to America and go and watch the Watkins Glen race. And they had packages. Like you could literally buy a package and just, that was it. That was your entry fee. That was your camping. That was everything. And I think that's something that they're probably going to have to do. And I actually think that this race has been, or was better than the last 6 500s that we've seen.
Yeah. The actual contents of what happened during the race, I'd agree. Yeah.
So I think the venue is fine. We just need incentives for people to be there and make the atmosphere like crazy. Like I love that they walked like the end of that race where they walked through the main lobby and out to the house of the cars and get taken to the boat. Like that was cool. Like there are so many things that are ticks at this place, but there's just a few things that we need to work through. And I think supercars really need to start thinking now about how they package these weekends, and not just on a 500 weekend, but just in general, so that people actually turn up.
Yeah, well, they'll need to make it enticing because probably the biggest hurdle, I think, is you've got 2 events in Adelaide, in South Australia. One of those is a long way away from the main population. And then if you look at, and I keep referring to the Clipsal for some reason, but you look at the Adelaide event, and that they're going to have all these extra cars there, like racing around, sprint cars and shit. They're going to have concerts. I mean, if I was going to outlay, you know, you think about, I've got to drive to Tail and Bend. I'm going to pay for my ticket plus all my food and stuff. Or I pay for a ticket back home where I can probably catch the O-Bahn, or I can catch, you know, a taxi, or depending on where you live, like you can just drive in and you'll get all of that. I know which one is like as a family, I think I'd be spending my money on. And so I think you're right. They need to find a way of creating a big vibe that doesn't have to be big concerts or anything, but have something there that can entice other people, you know, to make that effort. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Honestly, they can set things up. There is no reason why that place couldn't be a massive party scene along with camping and everything else. Like they can do it. I know it takes a lot of money to do so and you have to recoup those costs. So it's a financial thing. I get it. But seeing no crowd, next to no crowd, that is terrible. Like from a viewership point of view, like, and just like, you know, because now people go, oh, well, people didn't turn up, so it mustn't be that great event. It has nothing really to do with that. Like I think it can be great, but they need to work on it.
I guess so. I wanted to quickly just jump to part of the event and touch on some of the co-driver stuff. because I guess I need to say an apology or say sorry because I really didn't give some of the co-drivers their just rewards or I made an assumption. And when you look back at, I think we gave some scores last
We did.
podcast.
Yep.
And I had Cooper Murray and Job Stewart, and I gave them a 1 where I said, man, if they're towards the top field, you'd be lucky. And it made every piece of sense without being mean. I wasn't being mean or anything. I was just like, these guys are not going to be there. Cooper's been nowhere. Well done, boys, because definitely shut me up because like to finish 7th was an epic result.
Can we, a big shout out to Job Stewart.
Yeah.
Massive shout out because he had to have the biggest balls ever in terms of I'm getting thrown in with the main, right? Like he was battling Randall at one point and he held his own and he did exceptionally well. If it was an audition, which some believe it is, for that second seat, he passed hands down and should get a drive next year. But it's like, I think, when we did those predictions and we're based on, whether they have a shot or not, it wasn't just factoring in drivers, it was factoring in the car and how well it had gone so far during the year. Erebus had been fairly poor most of the time.
Struggling, yeah.
But in this case, well done, Barry, well done, team. They got the car up and running and Cooper and Job did a fucking stellar job.
Yeah, they sure did. Well, let's keep going on the co-driver stuff and let's get your thoughts on...
Receipt. Where's my receipt? Oh, I need to take my receipt. Didn't I say that?
No.
Young Moff was going to go into the weeds at one point? Like, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Wheeling.
You did say that you think he's past it, but to his defense, almost... I mean, there were some massive names. Almost everybody went off at that same turn, but you think about Whincup did it multiple times. Yep. Lounsey went off there. Yep. We had some pretty big names at that turn go off, so he wasn't alone.
No, he was the only Mustang to do it.
Okay, fair call. You did, got to pay your dues, mate. Well done.
Yeah,
done.
No.
I mean, I don't know why we're celebrating that, but
yeah, well, not really celebrating, to be honest. Like, I'd rather not be having that conversation. And it's not that I dislike Moff. I just don't. I think when it comes to having to wheel the last little bit out of a Gen 3 car in particular, if this was a Gen 2 car, I'd have a different thought process around this. But in a Gen 3 car, I'm not entirely convinced of him being comfortable in that car.
Yeah. And it must have been tough considering you had Frosty back in, so he's moved to the other car and then basically got beaten by Frosty over the weekend too, so that's tough.
That move by Frosty was close.
Yeah, it must have been. I was feeling it at that point where I was just like, no, don't do it.
I had flashbacks between Cam and Bathurst.
Whose boys? They're always getting together. Yes, classic.
Crazy.
If we look at some of the other co-drivers, Scott Pye, sensational, did a really good job. Will Brown still can't qualify for nuts. And
just go on to that cup. In that procedure in the practice session.
All right, can we touch on that a bit later? We'll touch on that later. I've got to grab from the Lucky Dogs podcast, and we will touch on that.
But yeah, Scott Pye, well done.
Jay definitely, he had a shocker. So Scott Pye, well done. Jamie Whincup, I don't know if you want to touch on that now about the fact. No, we'll save that one because let's do it as a combination about what we think about J-Dub.
Yep.
Tan, he did okay. Didn't have a great start, so he was a bit in the start, but ended up being okay. Yeah.
No, his second stint was great.
Yep.
That first stint, obviously, he dropped back. Yeah, he was right. He wasn't aggressive enough, and it's easy to do. He just got boxed out in the end. Kind of like what happened to Ojeda. Ojeda got it worse on the opening lap.
Gosh, he got... Yeah.
he got welcome to the main game type situation and really boxed out hard. I think he was as far back as 16th. But, again, a good recovery once up and running, but it is hard to recoup that. Also, McLeod, I actually want to give a shout out to this kid because he almost got Jamie at one point.
Yeah,
and I kind of wonder if he'd been able to wrestle a lead at any stage, if he could have sort of driven off a little bit and been a bit more comfortable. It's the slightest of mistakes, and it was the wrong time to have that mistake because the field was still so close. Yeah, I feel for the kid because I think other than that, he actually drove a really good race.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts around him were.
He did a good job, I think, overall, but when you take into account that was quite, it was quite an impactful mistake, and that was the problem. But, I think bit of confidence, get some time in the car, and he should be all right. But the other guy in that team, Tim Slade, I was a little concerned about him coming in because there was an interview he had where he was like, "Oh, I'm not really missing it," and I felt like maybe he was going to have a bit of a troublesome event. But man, boy, did he just was rock solid.
Yeah, very good. Sort of under the radar good. Just did what he needed to do, gave the car over to Nick, and Nick was able to bring it home in a really solid place. I mean, it's amazing how much the co-drivers actually mean to this now, like years gone by. I mean, it's always been a thing, but now I think it's really starting to show, especially since the cars are really close. It makes a huge difference if the co-e is on song or not. But yeah, the other one
that car had a shocker. Nobody was firing in that second car, in the DJR car. So yeah, Will's in a world of trouble, I think, and did not do any favors for that car.
Do you think I've got a theory that Hazelwood would be a great fit for that side of the garage?
Yeah, I think there might have been someone else that was talking about that. Maybe that's a pretty strong possibility after the last weekend. But like if they have a good Bathurst, Todd will be definitely a strong candidate. And it'll only take a really strong result from Will and Tony at Bathurst that might help him keep that seat. Yeah. Although it was likely he was going to stay. Yeah. Apparently after the weekend, there was some whispers that, hey, Todd's actually pretty good. But
Todd, all right, let's talk about Todd and Kostecki.
Yeah.
Because Todd's, his start wasn't great, but by lap 3, he was past the 2 Tickford cars, and I think it took another 10 laps for him to eclipse Whincup.
Yep.
That's a solid drive for an opening.
Yeah, and I truly think, like, in terms of the co-drive, he was right between probably him, Scott Pye. I wouldn't even put Frosty in this category. I'll just say those two. They were the only two that kind of look like they could just drive to the maximum of the car. A lot of the other co-drivers were kind of just doing their bit whilst they were very good, but they never looked like they were able to tear the wheels off, where Todd just looked like he was a main game driver, was just like lining him up, just setting him up to pass and just really driving the wheels off. He was sensational. I mean, ultimately between him and Brody, they were pretty close in their numbers. He really knocked it out of the park. He was sensational.
He was. If they keep that form, if they can get that car in the window of Bathurst,
maybe there might be.
I actually need to watch.
Might be that possibility of maybe an Enduro Cup champion Brody, and a Ford winning Bathurst. Especially because like Brody's like 6th in the championship, so he would then cement. You've got the top 6 already locked away. Already locked away with their positions for the finals, and that really just then would leave your final kind of 4 spots. So. Yeah,
I feel like everyone's getting handed golden tickets at the moment.
You get a ticket. You get a ticket.
You get a
J-Dub, I got a golden ticket. Yeah.
He got a golden ticket into Pye's ass.
His face, I must say, into the other car. And I know people are sort of saying, whatever, but fuck you, Mark Scaife. Like, damn, his face, when you first call us to say that Pye did it, get stuffed. Like, you knew their positions on the track. It was so clear to know who hit who. Anyway, but yeah, Feeney's face, he was just like, he was disgusted. And then when they saw the damage, Will's face, he was devastated. So it just totally ripped the wheel and all the uprights, and I think it was a drive shaft or something. Everything came out.
Absolute sabotage by the 88 to destroy the one. And, karma's a bitch.
Yes. Maybe it's a good time for us to actually drop in the Lucky Dogs podcast, which if you haven't heard of it, that's Brody and Will Brown's podcast. And we're going to do a few clips across this podcast, but this one is about kind of like some of the challenges falling apart and some of their commentary around that. And then we'll also then just jump into a secondary one, just talking about Todd and his performance. So let's kick this off.
Well, Cam was right behind me in the same car. So, I mean, we got pushed along, but at the same time, I think there was a lot of costly issues from the 88 side that took them out of the race. And, I guess Cam Hill's car, he was quite fast. You were quite fast as well, but you can't qualify for some reason. I mean, there's so many variables in that race that were just, I don't know. It was just, I guess the biggest thing in that race was there was a lot of mistakes from, I guess, the yellow side, which was, sort of a bit strange, I guess, coming from your team as well, which don't really see mistakes like that. So, yeah, and especially, I guess, you guys running into each other too, which is pretty funny.
I knew you'd bring that up. Pretty early in this podcast tonight. But yeah, I'm not sure. There was a lot of mistakes throughout the weekend, to be honest. Like, there was a fair few co-drivers that ran off. Like, we made a fair few moves. Like, Scotty did a fantastic job in his first stint and moved us up 4 or 5 spots in the first lap and made a lot of moves. But there was a fair few, I think, obviously. I think Moff ran off, Ken McLeod ran off, 88 had the problem in the pit lane. There was a lot of small things that happened out there that probably helped us get up there. And like you say, probably hurt maybe the Chevys a little bit, but I really think that Brock was probably the one on our side in the Chevy that was probably the opportunity to stick it to you guys. And unfortunately, it was just such a hard track to pass on.
There you go.
It's suddenly hard to pass because they can't draft a Mustang and just walk past them,
Well, I think that is a big part of it, right? And for the first time, we actually saw a Mustang was able to stay in the draft. Didn't really advance too much, but we actually saw Todd kind of stay with the car in front to make that pass on Whincup. And he did that under braking. So it wasn't like the slipstream catapulted him past, but it certainly did help immensely that some of these kind of changes, which we'll touch on a little bit more in a little bit, but it certainly did help. And it was great to see that that's actually an opportunity now to happen as opposed to, just having no opportunity at all.
I think it also goes back to, like you're just discussing it before, in regards to being able to rag the car. Todd was exceptional through the last 2 corners. He'd make up a lot of ground and then he would follow through that last fast right hand and he would stay within that 0.2 of a second. And that'd give him the opportunity at the end of the straight with the smallest of toes just to get past. And that was the difference. And I think that's why the main game guys probably struggled a lot, because they can all maximize the car, right? So when they're maximizing the car, it doesn't give much opportunity to everyone else. And that's not to say that Whincup can't maximize the 88, but he wasn't able to get the run onto the front straight that, Todd seemingly could. So, they're the differences that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So I guess,
You're telling me that.
telling me there's a chance. Yeah.
We'll quickly just touch on the Todd part of it. And this also sort of, if you think of it with the lens of maybe he is replacing Will Davison, when you listen to Brody's comments, it could all align nicely. So let's go.
Actually, this is something I was thinking about and I said on the weekend, because I always get interested in, who's going where and what drivers are coming into the category next year and the whispers you hear and that. But I'm surprised Todd's name hasn't been thrown up. Like, unless you guys have him on a long contract, why is no one thinking of him for a main game seat again?
I've got him actually tied up on the corner in the back corner. He's only allowed to play for enduros at the moment. So no, but yeah, it's funny. Like, I think he got asked that question in the press conference, and like, I've known Toddy for a long time, and we were teammates in Super 2 for my first year, and he never quite got given that opportunity. Like, he was Super 2 champion, right? And he never quite got given that, that good opportunity. And I guess the tide was starting to change a bit when we were in Super 2 of, go find a younger driver. Whereas probably, it always goes in cycles, right? And he was probably on that off cycle where he couldn't get probably, the drive that he deserved in, a top team to really show his talents. Yeah, I feel like I've said in all my things, like, he sort of won us that race, really. He did a great job. He was probably only, like a tenth or 2/10 off me, which is just, for a co-driver, that's just like a dream come true for me. And always does a great job. He's raced all year, races with the TFH boys in Trans Am. So he stays really sharp, race fit. He's coaching. He's always driving something. And yeah, like you said, I'm a little bit surprised as well that his name hasn't sort of been thrown around a little bit. And it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know how long his deal's for, but I hope it's for a while.
So yeah, maybe it is for a bit longer than we expect. Maybe. Yeah. But high praise, right? Both from Brown and from there. So yeah.
Look, Todd, he never had any equipment to really showcase anything. He had a couple of, small performances, but you were constantly going, well, is he good enough? Isn't he good enough? There was never anything to really say that he was ultimately strong. But I think that weekend showed, and look, even last time at Bathurst and the fact that he's dominating the Trans Am series, I think that shows that he's pretty good. But I do want to touch on the fact that Brody said that he's match fit, because I don't know if you were looking over the weekend, but now that the drivers need to be, similar in weight, I would hazard a guess that young Hazelwood's been hanging at Mac.
I have heard a few people talking about that very thing, where some people have been given some freedoms to be able to eat basically what they want, because that balance is really important. And the impact to some of the other drivers, where there is such a disparity, where that new ruling does impact, the weight difference between the two drivers. So I would suggest that, perhaps Brody could shed a few, and then Todd just can have a few more cheeseburgers.
I think Brody's doing anything of the sort. I think he's just turned to Todd and went, "Fatten up, mate. You'll be right."
Yeah, you'll be right. Get on the big protein. Get on the burgers, mate.
There was this great shot where they were in the pit lane and Brody was talking to him.
I was like,
"Hey, Toddy, you're about my size."
Yeah, he certainly wasn't in his position, I think.
And he was good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But again, on those two, just in general, just how close they are, I think you'd almost label them right now the Enduro Kings. They seem to be well sorted. So I'm looking forward to Bathurst again, Damien.
Yes, let's listen to their thoughts on finally winning an Enduro after 6 years. So it's too long, but there we go. We'll play another one here for us.
So it's sort of hard. Another two stats is it's the first time in 6 years that I've pulled an Enduro, so that was pretty cool.
Scotty Mack would have won, wouldn't he?
6 years ago, 2019.
Is that the Debris?
I think
he didn't win in 2020 or 2021. Bathurst.
No, Shane won 2020, I believe. That was the year that Waters was remember he was really fast that year. But
did he win Sandown that year, Waters?
No. Shane won that too, I think.
Yeah, right. And even when you told me, how long it had been, I was like, nah, it just doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But
the last time we won a 500 was Cam Waters in 2017. I was there with Dad, Hawley, and Hawley's father. And Hazelwood on that very weekend got the Super 2 championship. That's how long ago it was.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
This whole thing, and this is what really peeved me off, because I don't know if we've got the Brown clip of him talking about the Super Mustang, but
in the past,
the Gen 2 Mustang. But they clipped that Mustang so hard, it couldn't win anything.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, it's been a long time. There's a reason why Ford people are irate when GM people cry fucking foul. And that's because you guys have politically mastered wins for so long that you can sod off.
Yeah, as soon as there's just a balance, so it's even just a slight leveling up, which we're not even convinced will work at Bathurst yet. Let's wait and see. But we'll touch on that. We're gonna have a quick chat. We can't avoid the parity stuff or the changes, so we'll get on to that.
We'll have to get into
but let's do a bit of a flashback, because the time that you were talking about, I'm not sure how Whincup was going back then, whether he'd hang up the boots or not, but he certainly there's got to be a point. And I said to you, pretty much after watching it that night, I reckon if he has a shit Bathurst, Jamie will just hang up his boots. He's always been really open and honest. The fact that when he's going too slow or he's not contributing to the team, he's going to step out of that seat. And an absolute shocker. So he obviously hit his teammate or hit the other car that he owns in the safety car thing, which
to touch on as well. But
that whole process, you called it, I called it, everybody was talking about how bad it was going to be, fixing a problem that wasn't really there, and it's caused more. And the other part of that safety car issue, just quickly, we didn't have a safety car during the race, which means it's most likely, if they're not changing anything, is going to be deployed for the first time at Bathurst. What do you reckon the chances are of something else going wrong there?
High.
Pretty high.
Very high. And catastrophically high. I don't think this is a good idea. I think they should can the idea and just go back to the old ways. They're not going to do that. I know they're not, because they're supercars. They have an ego problem, and once they've implemented something, they won't go back on it. And I don't say that lightly. I can just see this being all sorts of problems, especially if it's, for instance, across the top. or even just after Skyline there where you drop down, if there's an incident, I can just, there's going to be problems with this. I just can't see it working at all. I hope we don't. But a statistical go hits the back of his own teammate in a rehearsal. I think that tells you exactly everything you need to know because he is a team owner. He will be across it. He will understand it enough. I don't know. I think
it was still
every evidence that you need, all the evidence you need.
Yeah, it was still too confusing that someone like Jamie, who is a stickler for understanding everything and being prepared and ready, had that mistake. And then, like you think about some of the other things that happened for Jamie. He had the off at the backside of the circuit. He just did not have a great event at all.
3 times? I feel like he was off
twice.
Twice? Okay, twice.
Was it? It was definitely twice.
I think twice were caught. I thought there was a third that they didn't see and caught the back end of. Maybe I could be wrong. If it's only 2, I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm not trying to be mean. But yeah, the fact that he's coming off in such a way, I don't think his ability behind the race car is necessarily diminished, but I think the ability to focus for a long-standing period of time behind the wheel of a race car is what's dropping away. And I think that's the hard part, right? So he's still got speed, undoubtedly. But the mistakes creep in when you start to get a little fatigued. You got to remember he's still running the team. Like there's still things that he has to focus on that'll take his attention away from the driving aspect of it. So I don't even think he needs a bad Bathurst. I have a niggly feeling that he'll probably just at the end of it just say, listen, it's too hard to do both. And I'm going to concentrate on this and give the team, because he does, he puts the team first always, and put the team first and put somebody else in the car for next year.
Yeah.
That's just my feeling on it. And that's not, again, it's not to say that he's lost his ability to drive a car fast, because he definitely hasn't, but he's got a lot more on his plate now. And I think that eventually takes a toll on you.
Yeah, okay. Well, in this little caption, like Will Brown's talking about the safety car procedure and how there's a lot of things going on, if I'm coming into the pits or, what am I doing? Where's the cars around me? There's so many distractions when I guess the old system used to be you just look for the flags, right? That's all you needed to do. But that's kind of the lead into where they get to the J-Dub and the Pye Crash. All right.
And you forget where the zone is. Like, I don't think watching the footage, Scott broke that early. And talking to Jamie, I believe he thought the sector line was further ahead. So the communications were good and all that. But I think just having that car in front where you're like, oh, I'm catching them a bit, it becomes a distraction that instead of thinking about the safety car procedure all of a sudden and the braking zone, I think, you're probably thinking about the car in front of you and catching them and all different things and making sure you maximize the zone and following them and sort of becoming focused on them like we do sometimes when you're behind a car. You actually miss the line to brake at. And that was, it was obviously disappointing from our side of the garage with what happened. Like I was like watching, and I was watching the small little screen on the data stand, and I'm like, God, Jamie's close to him and he's closed in hard on him. Like, I hope he knows about it. And then I saw Scott brake and I saw him try pull hard left and hit him, and Andrew and that weren't looking. And I was like, oh, he's just hit us. And I didn't think it'd be as bad as it was, but it did a lot of damage to the car, surprisingly. It's good they were able to get it back out. But it was pretty unfortunate for us. We missed a session and a third due to it.
Yeah, so it really hindered the one car. Like, Brown was fast on that Friday session, that late Friday session. And they never, I think by race, they'd recovered everything that they needed to recover, but it really affected them in qualifying and really put them out of touch with being able to go after your waters. So, this comes back to that whole Camaro thing, doesn't it? It's hard to say that, parity, there's all the Fords at the front. Yeah, but the Camaros basically just shafted themselves.
Yeah, they had a lot of that. They go on further just to talk about, the impacts of missing that. Now, Brown played it down a lot, but then he did also talk to the fact that because of the length of the lap, like a race lap is like 2 minutes. So when you're doing out laps or in laps, that's 2 minutes 30 plus or whatever it is, that, really those sessions that they had, that you're only ever going to get, half a dozen laps kind of each, because you'll do some changes, driver changes, you'll do some changes to the car. You're not getting a whole bunch of laps in it. And so those laps become really crucial because it's not like you just keep pumping out like a Simmons Plains or whatever, where you get a half an hour session and that's effectively like 20 to 25 laps in that session. At the bend at a 2-minute lap, and then plus for your in and out laps, you're getting 14 maybe laps if you're lucky, right? And so it's not a lot. And then you halve that between the driver and the co-driver, and you're getting 6 or 7 laps each, and that's it.
Yeah. The same problem applies at Bathurst, although at Bathurst they get hour sessions.
Yep.
So, they get a little bit longer. It is hard. It's hard. Like, it doesn't matter. Once you've got a long lap, it's incredibly difficult to maximize your time on track and make changes and then, relearn everything. You don't really get an opportunity. I think that's where the likes of Shane used to be so good, SVG.
Yep.
He could get a feel for it literally off of, like, he'd do the out lap, he'd do half a quick lap and go, yeah, okay, I need to change this, and bolt back in and make that change type thing. You wouldn't have to finish it or complete the lap. It's hard to do. Like, I don't know what the answer is because they obviously had, I think it was 5 backup categories, support categories this weekend, which was great to see, to be honest. But that obviously limits the time that the supercars can also be on track doing their things. Yeah. Don't know what the answer is other than increasing the length of time that they have on track for maybe 1 or 2 sessions over the
well, I mean, if you had like less sessions but longer, so maybe reduce the sessions by 1, but then increase to an hour for one of them, you probably find, I think that would be more beneficial. But, all right, let's keep things moving because there was so much else to talk about, and refueling was definitely a bit of a hot topic because they put all these restrictors in to try and help balance the flow and make sure everybody was a bit more even. How do you think that?
Even flow. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the restrictors didn't work. No, they do work.
When they work,
they do work.
So 60% of the time, they work 100% of the time.
And they worked really well on the 88. Apparently that was a priming issue from what I've heard. So they didn't quite prime the tank correctly. But no, well, the interesting part is, like, Becky brought up the fact that the Cam Waters was his refueling was actually quicker, or the flow rate seems to be quicker than what the DJR car was. So I found that quite interesting because it's like, well, hang on, they're supposed to be the same, but there's obviously tricks to the trade to get these things working. And I mean, this comes back to the argument we were having last week where we would rather see the fuel churn, like someone holding it, putting it in like from like a massive thing. You can't, well, you might be able to, but you shouldn't be able to mess with that, right? Like, that should theoretically be whatever that is supplied by supercars type thing, and that's what you use. And it would, an element of human error too, because they got to hold it and get it in, and it's only a certain amount of fuel that they can do per churn. So for me, I think that it's an easy solution, but it is interesting that, teams are still finding ways, which is their job, to engineer an advantage.
Yeah, there certainly seems like, and it's always the case where they're just going to find little advantages. I think when you look at the churns, there are some teams that were really struggling to keep and maintain the angles and things like that. Whereas when you looked at the 888s on the churns, they'd done something to strengthen that up, and it would almost, the bottle would just sit on it to, without the need of the person to be holding it in place perfectly. So they're always going to find ways to improve things, but I just felt like, much like the safety car issue, that they made some changes to try and even things up, and it basically worked in our favour, but it backfired for 888. So
it did. On this, I put up a thing on Facebook, the Valve crowd, just asking the question, what have your say? What were your highlights and lowlights from the race? And Paul Wright actually responded. So thanks, Paul, for doing so.
Yeah.
He actually said the highlights, intrigue over the 88 fuel rig, as we're sort of, and then he was talking about Hazelwood's pass on the GOAT, which we've obviously already discussed. But I like the fact that was his highlight. So he must be a fellow Ford man. So good job, mate. And he also said that well done, Fox, because car 1 made up 10 spots and mysteriously no footage of that happening whatsoever. Not one pass was shown. So good job.
Wow. They've done the reverse. Okay.
Exactly. And he said also the low lights from the racing, he said there was just zero consequences from that, going off. So We sort of touched on that, but I just thought I'd bring that up because, Paul, you took the time to actually put something in, and we're thankful for that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, very thankful. That is awesome. And it does really just show that maybe the Scott Pye thing is still happening there, that don't want to show the car,
Actually, that's a good point. I don't even think about going down that lane. Maybe they just don't like Scott Pye still.
Yeah. Maybe they still just won't show his car. But yeah, it did sort of just pop up that he was gaining places and stuff. They weren't doing the usual, probably 60% of the time being on the Red Bull cars, because it was pretty hard to be when they were so far back.
To be fair, the only Red Bull car I actually saw all day was the Feeney car, just thinking about it. Like, there wasn't, I don't think there was much on the brown car at all.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Conspiracy theory, where's my tinfoil cap?
Get it on. All right, let's keep it moving and let's talk about some of those changes. I'm not going to say parity changes, but like some of the changes that happened to the Mustang.
Yep.
Larko did this big spiel on his whiteboard, or whatever he calls it now, the Hina Hub is what it's called. Talking about it's 1 kilometer an hour. That's what they're chasing. That's the difference. And I just thought, man, come on, it's got to be more than that. I sort of view it, my take on the whole changes that happened is that they can't seem to get, I think with the engine, that they need to make the change to the engine, but they can't seem to do, it's kind of like we've got to add 20 horsepower or nothing, and they can't seem to get that balance right. The shift cuts, which something Brody I'll play, I think he talks to, the shift cuts were the most important thing, and the other aero changes were, whatever. But it was good to see the Fords could, as we've mentioned, stay in the draft. So Todd didn't, as we said, he didn't build on him, but he didn't lose. And so I think that's a really good thing from some of these changes.
I agree. I actually think Brody might not agree. I mean, the balance of aero would have changed probably slightly rearward.
Yep.
With this, which I think probably also helps a little bit for braking and things like that, just to level out the car. How much of a I don't think, when you say that it's changed, it's not like a drastic, there's like much more down this way. Like these are incremental little changes. They're not going to do a whole heap, because the Ford actually lost a lot of wing angle by doing so. So it's sat further back, it's sat further up, but they couldn't create more downforce from it. So I think, the changes themselves were fairly minor. The shift cut probably does help, but again, you don't want to be relying on shift cuts. And then there's the whole question of, okay, if they find the horsepower, what do they do? Does the aero stay the same? What how does that all look once that happens? I would say that when we get to the wind tunnel and the amount of data that supercars now have, there's going to be changes to all three cars.
Yeah, I think they'll have to make changes to balance it all out. And just quickly, saw a lot of comments and people were sort of talking about, oh, you spent $1 million and you sent these guys to the wind tunnel and now you're going to make changes. But I felt like that's exactly why they were able to make those changes, because they'd spent that money, they'd gone there. They knew that if they tweaked these things, that the end result was going to be Y rather than being X. And so, I think it's kudos. We're always quick to make sure we're keeping them honest. I think we should also reward them. The fact they did all these wind tunnel testings in the past shows that they can make these changes and know kind of where they're going to land. And so I think that was the right outcome, even if, as we'll hear, Brody's still not really convinced.
No, and look, the science is there, right? They're not taking a swing anymore. They've got the data to back up the changes that they're making and know what will happen. The Ford that put in more changes, they wanted extra changes. They didn't get every single change. So it's really important to understand that this is actually a good thing. And they, in my opinion, you think about Formula One, they don't just wind tunnel the car and then put it on track and then it's perfect. It doesn't work that way, right? There's many things that they don't think of while it's in the wind tunnel, and then they have to recalibrate that data to make it work. At the end of this year, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to go back to the wind tunnel and say, well, this wasn't as effective. This is what we need to do. Let's trial this. We need to get the super into this. I think, yes, it's a lot of money, but if you're going to say you're a paritized sport, this is going to be an ongoing thing. This isn't, one tick box. It's consistently verifying the data over and over again.
Yeah. All right, I'll play a nice long. It's a bit of a long one. We've got a couple that we can talk to from the Lucky Dogs podcast, but this first one's a bit of a long one, but it really is some of the discussions and a bit of banter as well.
Well, that sort of stuff. I think a big thing heading into the weekend was obviously, which was a bit of a talking point, and I think we discussed a little bit, was the parity. I think a few people would want to know there what it like. I guess I talked to you a little bit over the weekend about it, but did you notice any change, or what was the big change in the parity heading into the weekend, or what differences did it make, I guess?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing, I didn't really notice too much of an aero point of view. That was obviously a large talking point going into the weekend, but honestly, it was, side skirts, mirrors, and the wing moved, 20, 25 mil, I believe, up and back to balance it back out. But, like I said to Wompo on the grid when he was talking about, they're trying to talk it up and try and make everyone understand. The mirrors I could have knocked off for free. So just by hitting the wall or someone else, like it's such a small thing, but probably the shift cut was probably the biggest change. I didn't actually get to race around at any Camaros because you guys decided to pit and have cheeseburgers in your pit stop. Well, I guess Red Bull did. But Toddy got to race J-Dub, obviously, and said that he could only just tow up to Jamie with quite a large headwind. So, but, could actually tow up.
The excuse for everything, freaking headwind here.
But this is just all the facts, William, that they have here. So,
William.
and there was it's kind of
William. Yeah.
But it's true, and facts are facts, right? So, I think he said it pretty well. There's still a discrepancy. What we want is that the engine is enough that the shift cut doesn't have to occur. You can have the same shift cut, and and then we can sort of battle on from there. I still think I think the aero has made a bit of a difference just in terms of drag.
Yeah, it has. And this next part where he goes into I guess what he felt versus the old and the new, and then obviously his performance in the Camaro there in the prior, not last year, before when they were there. So we'll grab this one.
Strange. There was so much talk around it being a track for the Mustang because, in theory, the theory was that the Mustang has more downforce, more drag, yada, yada, yada. But, the fastest track we went to leading into the round was Grand Prix, and the Fords were nowhere at that round. So, so far my experience hasn't been that. I'm not sure where that theory come from. Yeah, the most optimal package for the car, at least from an aero point of view, was picked in the tunnel, and then we've gone away from something that was, had less downforce and less drag, and the car seemed to perform okay. So, but at the same time, the last race that I raced at the Bend when I was driving a Camaro, the finish was myself and Cam, and it was that again. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've got that one. That is an interesting one because he was talking about, not going over the top.
Under the bus now. It's great.
Yeah, because, he didn't want to, perform too well. And so it just shows you that even, last time and probably even now that there are people who are driving to certain numbers to, make things look a certain way, right? And it'll be interesting to see. I'll play the clip and then, we'll just see what people think of it. So here we go.
Yeah,
it's been 6 years since the Fords won an Enduro, which is pretty cool. And it's been 21 years since DJR's won a 500.
Well, they couldn't even win a race when they bloody had more than parity, the Fords. Look at them go. Far out. That Mustang was bloody tucked in at the front and it had everything going on. But okay, that's all right then. You guys will complain no matter what. But
careful. You're coming the other side next year.
That's true. I can't say much.
Be real careful.
Watch yourself.
I'll be the one next year being like, this is bullshit.
Brody was right.
That's right. It will be interesting. Like, obviously, you've driven both. So it's hard for anyone to argue against you. Like, that's probably also for me. Like, I can't really argue against you when you've driven both cars where not many other people have done that. So it'll be interesting for us to jump in them and see what they're like. And I'm interested to see what happens with all the wind tunnel this year with, obviously Toyota, Ford, GM going back over there to see what sort of changes they make to all of them, or if many of them get changes.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting. It was, the funniest thing for me going on the weekend was, remember the last time we were there at the Bend in 23 and everyone was like, oh yeah, it was a Mustang track. It was a Mustang track. It was a Mustang track. You remember that weekend for me where it was, do you remember the old parity trigger system? Like I literally just drove around like 85%, not trying to trigger parity. And it was such a weird weekend where, the Fords were strong, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe the other guys just screwed up and you had a bit of a tough weekend. But another talking.
Yeah. 85%. Drop. Yeah.
General Motors.
Well, it just shows you that still, even, as we've talked about, they do play the political game so well. And I really hope that we're getting to that point where we're doing it when we say where, the Ford teams are doing it in a much better way. And so that from now moving forward, then when Red Bull come across, it should be a really great place to be, other than the fact that Red Bull Mustangs will win, and we're not going to be happy about that.
Yeah. You want to know why Ford supporters are so pissy all the freaking time? This is why they get pissy. And that's when they get really pissy, when the GM guys cry wolf. And ultimately, for as long as we can ever remember, since this category began, it's been a problem. And it's always been on the GM side that they get away with it, and on the Ford side, they don't. And I think now, more so than ever, and I know this sort of moves away from the parity side of things, but this is parity in the pit lane or in the category. We need to remove old furniture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, the less scapes involved, the better. But I guess for me, like, the part that I get frustrated with is with Supercars on this, is that got all the data. They can see it all. So they know he's driving around, at less pace. They can see that he's rolling out early. They can see all this stuff. So I guess it's the tinfoil hat. Are they covering it up and not doing anything because they've got that bias or that interest? Or are they just so, I don't know, spread too thin, don't care, like whatever the other variables are, but they're not looking at the data at all. And so therefore teams can get away with it. A little frustrating as fans.
Yeah. And the fact with the Gen 3 era that all this stuff, all these concerns were raised before they even hit the track. And it was just plain ignored. And I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. You can't. You can't do that now. Obviously, 90s and 2000s was a different time. But now it's, come on, let's get this shit sorted, because I don't care if a Camaro wins, but I want to know that it's winning because it should, not because it's got a bloody huge advantage. Running around at 85% means you're looking after tires, you're looking after engine, you're looking after gear. That's why they could just keep rolling away at Bathurst by over half a lap, because they're not pushing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue, because how do you think it's going to shape up for Bathurst with these sort of changes? And I guess with people like Brody, who just love the Enduros and love Bathurst. So how do you think it's going to shape up?
Look, I'm on, before this weekend or before last weekend, I was like, let's say 25%. I was like, we're going to get probably slaughtered once we get up there. I'm tinkering more around the 45-ish that we might have a chance. And by that, I mean, if I said evens 50-50, I'd say we're about 45. I still think we're slightly undercooked. I have every single fingers and toes crossed, Damien.
Yes.
That when we turn up to Bathurst, we are competitive, because, or as I said, I don't actually care if I do care, but I don't care if a Camaro wins. But I want to know that they've won it on merit and doing the right job, and not because they've got such an advantage over, half the freaking field.
Yeah. And it's going to be a tough one because if they do win, it's going to have to be basically a fight to the very end on the last lap for us to feel, okay, well, at least we had a chance. Yeah, if we have a shocking weekend, whether it's, some of the issues that play Triple Eight, some of the Ford teams, and then we don't have anyone up there, it's still going to feel like we haven't got it right. It's going to be hard to gauge that. So,
yeah, look, I mean, if you see things like what we saw last weekend with the Camaros, with the Fords, I'm frustrated with the Ford teams, right?
Yeah.
Because they haven't executed well enough, and that's a completely different discussion point. What I want to know is that in a head-to-head battle over the duration of the race, if we get to the end of the race and it's a Mustang v Camaro, then it's an even shot at it. That's all I want to know. Like, you want to see the race unfold. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's just my feeling on it. But we're going to have all sorts of things at Bathurst, because there's going to be all sorts of yellows and safety cars, and so much crap's going to play in.
That's the part. Yeah, the safety car procedures is going to be one to watch to see if they make any adjustments based on what happened. Because pretty much all drivers were in agreement on that not really working. So I'm hoping they make some changes for that, and so that won't impact as much, because that could take out a few cars, So
yeah.
But as long as, I think I'll be kind of happy as long as up and down the straights, that we have that opportunity to be able to stay in the tow and to pass, I think we'll feel a little better about it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
let's see how it goes.
we were losing 4/10 a straight.
Yeah.
If we're only losing a 10th a straight, then I'd say that's a win. Yeah, much to play out with that. Before we actually just finish this up and switch gears to Formula One, because we've got AS coming up, the last thing I actually wanted to touch on the Supercars front was the tyres. We've heard in recent times from a lot of drivers that the 2025 tyre isn't good enough. What do we need here? Do we need, no disrespect for Dunlop, they've implemented the changes and they keep implementing changes that Supercars tell them to, but do we need another manufacturer to come in with a different concept to liven these cars up and get them raceable more so than they are now? Because the main thing is always, like, the one thing that touches these cars to the ground is that black stuff.
Yeah, I'm in two minds because, I mean, they made the changes to the tyre and we could see it, like, you know, we saw Cam chasing Kostecki, where they were both just playing the game of balancing the gaps, and you know, Cam would have a bit of a crack, and then tyres would get too hot, so he dropped back. I'm more convinced now that the racing's better with this tyre than the last one, where we had high deg and then just people were driving to certain numbers and distances, and we never got anything. So I'm sort of in the camp of, okay, can we maybe make some tweaks to it? Yes, probably, but in reality, I don't want to see another manufacturer because I just feel like that's like resetting the clock, and then you got to go through all these processes again.
Yeah, well, even just a change, I don't know what. I mean, I'm no tyre expert. I like the fact on the 2025 tyre, they seem to be able to push for a longer period of time, and it seems that by doing so, they will make mistakes behind the wheel, and I would rather see drivers making mistakes than driving to a number, because at the end of the day, if you're driving to a number, you're so far within yourself that you've got all the time in the world to think about everything else that you need to do. You won't make a mistake. I think this shows, especially at the bend, with the likes of Whincup falling off the road, McLeod and a few others, and that it's easy because you have to push a little bit to stay up with everyone. It is easier to make that mistake. And I think we've got a narrative now, and it's not just in supercars, it's also in F1, where we think that these guys are perfect because most of the time they're just driving to a number. So they don't make the mistake. I much prefer seeing what we've seen on a couple of occasions this year where we're seeing mistakes by drivers.
Okay, let's just quickly as we round out the podcast, let's touch on Azerbaijan, Baku, new legend. Back, baby. It's very rarely gone, but Azerbaijan be a great one because Piastri don't fucking move out of the way. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Let's go, Piastri. Come on.
Go, Piastri. Yeah, no, look, Piastri v Norris, mate. It's going to be a good one. We're back to war. I don't think he's going to be moving out of the way anymore. I have a feeling on that. But yes, this is going to be interesting because we are in Charles Leclerc territory. This is his favorite track. And I feel like he will probably find himself in battling in for pole because he just loves this track for some reason. Even if the car's shit, he loves this track. So
yeah. Well, it's going to need Oscar to actually really outperform. Now, he loves the track too.
He does.
This could be a real nail in the coffin for Lando if he doesn't get it right, because Leclerc does love this track and he's normally pretty quick there. And, you know, the Max factor, right? Anytime you've got a skinny wing, Max is going to make it work. And so, you know, it's very likely that there could be two people between, you know, if Oscar gets pole, he could have a Leclerc and a Max and then a Norris. So, you know, it's going to be a good one to watch. I think this one will be very energized. I'm just not going to watch any of the pre-race stuff because if I have to sit through any more of that Sky Sports rubbish, I'm going to end up with a need for a new TV.
I haven't sat through it for a long time.
Yeah.
I quite literally wait until about 2 minutes before race start and then I turn it on deliberately then. But yeah, look, the Max factor and the Leclerc factor. So it's all going to be about whether the teams can balance those cars for them. Because we know if Max gets a car that's relatively balanced, then he's going to be quick. It will be a bit harder than the Monzas and stuff. So even though it's a skinny wing, I'd be intrigued to see just how well.
Yeah.
I do kind of feel like this should return to the fold of McLaren at the top. The question will be which way. Obviously, for us, we're hoping it's three-way. Yeah. The other thing is, wasn't Russell and Antonelli locked in now for next year? If not, I'm sure they'll announce it soon because there's no way Wolf's getting Verstappen, so I can't see either of the other two going anywhere. And
no,
Wolf's not going to replace them.
Well, I mean, just think maybe if Oscar becomes available.
Fuck no. You would not. If you were Oscar, that would be like...
I would leave my cards open for after next year. That's what I would be doing.
Exactly. I just couldn't do it right now. McLaren's still bet. You know, the only one that I would say Oscar would or could go to, which is also doing the rounds, is the Ferrari thing. But I don't want him in Ferrari right now.
I sort of feel like Ferrari's the move you make after you've had three world championships, you know? That's where I think you go.
All right, that's the move, Oscar. 3 world championships, and then you can switch to Ferrari. That's you've heard it here first on the Valve Bounce. That is the play.
Predicting the future, manifesting it. I think is the term I heard. Yeah,
so Oscar is a 3-time champ in 3 years' time. I like it. Not even 2 years' time from now.
Yeah, indeed.
All right. Well, I think that probably wraps it up, mate. Because I don't think there's much more else, and we've probably taken up all the interweb time.
We have. Well over an hour, so we've done our bit. So
we have
everybody for joining us. Check us out as always on the socials.
That's it. Type in down below if you made it this far because I'll be intrigued. And don't just fast forward to this point. I'll know.
How, but we'll.
Yeah, no. Good luck to Oscar.
Yes.
And let's see what happens from the Bathurst point of view, mate.
Ooh, yeah. There's a few things we've got some plans for some videos in between for the Supercar stuff. So we'll keep that coming. And next stop is Baku. Be brilliant, Baku.
Let's hope so. All right, guys. You know where we are.